Hi, I'm Dylan Grove, and I went on my CCE trip to Tucson, Arizona to study immigration issues. My initial views on immigration were not very well informed. I knew that there were many migrants who came over illegally, but I didn't know why they came over or what the process looked like. And I was also pretty much concerned with the safety of our nation. I thought a lot of terrorists and drugs were smuggled over, and I didn't really consider that a lot of the migrants that come here are coming here for work or because they have family members here. Therefore, when we took our CCE trip down to Tucson, Arizona, I was very open to the material that we would be learning. I didn't know what to expect initially upon arriving to Borderlinks, but as the trip progressed, we were exposed to phenomenal guest speakers, and we got to see the important parts that dealt with immigration, like the border and the courthouse and the desert, and all these different events pretty much changed my views on immigration forever. A big part to the success that we had down in Tucson was the ability for our group to just come together and get on a personal level and bounce ideas off each other. And I think this stemmed from the early exercises that we had in the beginning and our willingness to be open with each other and establish friendships that would last throughout the whole entire trip and even thereafter. Our first guest speaker was Guadalupe, and she kind of hit me with the reality that there's this whole entire different perspective on immigration. She first kind of pointed out the view that using the term illegal immigration is dehumanizing it, and it's kind of criminalizing this human crisis that Mexico and their people is facing. This got me thinking of all the times that I've used the term illegal immigration and how it can negatively impact someone who is trying to get over to America. It brings up this whole entire idea that you never know a word is bad or dehumanizing until years in the future where you can look back and say, wow, I cannot believe I used that term. That really was harmful and hurtful to all those people. Speaker Guadalupe also brought up the idea how there is a highway passing over from San Diego to Tijuana, and underneath that highway is the border that separates Mexico from the United States, and it brings up this perspective that it's just a double standard, that the United States would allow trade and the import and export of goods, but we won't allow the flow of workers. Speaker Guadalupe really got us thinking about culture, as she described that there are 22 different languages spoken in the state of Arizona. And culture can be described as values, beliefs, behaviors, and language that connects a group of people together, not necessarily just one big society of America. With this definition in mind, it's important to realize that when you split a land between two different countries, you're splitting up cultures. You're splitting up Nogales, the city, not Nogales, Arizona, and Nogales, Mexico. You're splitting up one kinship of people. It was said that before the wall was put up, people would travel to and from Nogales to visit family, but once the border was put up, that family was actually separated. Arivaca is a small town around 700 people that is considered one of the bordering towns and is most closely affected by the efforts by border control. As the guest speaker from Arivaca explained to us her lifestyle and the community of Arivaca, we really got an inside look of how that culture operates and how the efforts by border control really affect their daily life. People in Arivaca are very closely tied, and they want to be able to just live their lives undisturbed out in the remote area in which they live. Another part of the Arivaca culture is caring for other lives, and they see these migrants coming through as just their neighbors or anyone that they want to welcome to their town. So when they see these migrants come in struggling, needing water, starving, on the brink of death, they want to help them. They want to hospitalize them. They want to just make sure that they're able to continue living. That's why groups like No More Deaths or the Good Samaritans exist, because they see these people as equally as a part of society as them, and they want to be able to make sure that they're not dying in the desert. A lot of the belief for the people of Arivaca relies on common sense and just the overall caring of another's life rather than a political agenda. On our way down to the border in Nogales, Tucson, and Nogales, Mexico, we finally noticed the border checks that our speaker Todd Miller and the speaker from Arivaca were talking about. Seeing these border checks really put into perspective what it's like to be stopped and searched by a Border Patrol agent. And as we've learned through our speakers, a lot of the times these Border Patrols will racial profile Mexican people. Interesting story that arose from these border checks was as we passed through in our van with 15 college students who were white, the officer simply said, "Oh, you guys are college students, head on down," while in the other van, Kati, who was in the vehicle, she was observed more closely because of her Mexican ethnicity. As we approached Nogales, Mexico, we saw the wall for the first time, and honestly, I've never seen anything quite like it. My initial thoughts, for whatever reason, were that the wall did not need to be bigger. I saw the wall as, although having an interesting look to it, it seemed like no one was really going to try to jump over the wall. They were more concerned with just living their daily lives and going about town as they normally would. Which leads me to my next point of how strange I felt when I was observing these Mexican people from the American side. Two Mexican people would walk by and they were wondering why we were taking pictures, and as I think to myself, I too should wonder why I'm taking pictures. These people are no different than I am. They're just trying to live their life, yet we have this wall that separates two different societies when in reality it's just one big city that should be all together rather than separated by a wall. One of the most impactful experiences we went through was the desert walk, and as Ed, a retired worker who was also labeled as a good Samaritan, guided us through the rough terrain of the desert, I never quite realized how desolate and dangerous it is out there. As we navigated through the desert walk, which a walk that many migrants have actually taken themselves, we start to realize the brutalities of walking through the desert. The hills, the cacti, the dead trees with thorns on them, the miles of nothingness, and the lack of water. And you realize that being out in this element is only going to lead you to death. This experience was especially eye-opening because you never quite consider the conditions that these people have to go through in order to get to our country. Regardless if they're illegal or legal, people are going through conditions in which there's a high probability of them perishing away. An important enlightenment of culture that this trip offered for me was through the speaker Dario. Dario showed us what it's like to be a part of a culture and stick to that culture and hold those values through any condition. Dario and his family are undocumented migrants here in the United States, and through what Dario has done in his life really shows you his dedication and overall determination to contribute to his family and realize that his family is everything, and this is a cultural value that is shared not only by Dario but all Mexican people. As I read Enrique's journey, I realized that Enrique would do anything, he'd go through any type of measure to be back and reconnected with his mom, which essentially is carried over to the way that Dario lived his life, doing anything he could possibly do for his family. When considering Dario's story, we must realize that culture is the essence of how people live, and that's basically why culture is important to understand, because the way that people live their lives is fostered by the culture that they are a part of, which is especially important to understand when you're considering the policies that go into America and how their enforcement interfere with how people live their lives according to how culture has raised them. Borderlinks helped me develop a new perspective that goes into considering culture and the underlying factors that go into a problem. With that, they help me develop a new appreciation for culture, and it is my understanding that if you appreciate culture, then you can appreciate and respect the people who are a part of that culture, because you can better understand where they come from and how they're acting and why they're acting the way they are. I think carrying this mindset throughout life, you will be able to encounter people and benefit from meeting them, benefit from the interactions that you have, instead of just saying, oh, that's different, that's not the way that I view things, that's not the way that I like to live life. But rather, if you can just take in what they're saying to you, take in their lifestyle, then you can just add a whole new dynamic to your life. that was my CCE trip. Thanks for watching.